Good evening. Welcome back to episode 2 of Savannah by Night. I'm glad any of you have decided to rejoin us and keep track of the visceral shenanigans that we're going to be getting into week after week. But before we get into that, I think it'd be a good time to reintroduce you to our players. If they would like to introduce themselves and their character and their pronouns for either, and their clan if they would feel so inclined.
I am Dreamy, but I play Kate. We are both she, her, and Kate is Ventru.
I'm Tara, pronouns they, them, but I'm playing Tabitha Morn, she, they, a Nosferatu.
I'm Martel, he, him. I play Artem, also he, him.
What's your clan, bro?
I don't remember, man. Gangrel.
And I'm Iskra. I play Cora Violante. She's a Malkavian. I'm similar. Pronouns are she, her. Let's do this.
We are missing our Poppy tonight. Player just needed a night off. However, she has very graciously presented us with a altered version of our opening theme that hopefully doesn't get us into any trouble with DMCA issues. But we thank her for that. I'd also like to extend a thank you to Max, first and foremost, for all his continued hard work with producing. I don't know how to express how much I enjoy that I have my own Roz Doyle. And you can't see his face, so I don't think he's showing himself right now, but that's phenomenal. And for playing the red shirt to a T and lying to absolutely everyone for months on end. Thank you so much for that level of commitment. When I tell people for the last 3 years on this stream, commit to your bullshit, that man lived up to it. So thank you for that. Again, this is a bit of a darker game. I think last week may have proven that point to some of you. And if at any point the players are uncomfortable about something that exists outside of the bounds of what we have discussed individually, each of them can just hold up their hand and interrupt and say, I'm not comfortable with this, or can we fast forward through this, or can we edit this entirely? And we will address that right there and then. Because the point is, no matter how dark we can get with this, the point is to have fun. And for all of us to have fun. But for any of you that find something a little too uncomfortable in the audience, it's okay to take a break. Or perhaps this is not the stream for you, and that's okay. We understand. And if it isn't, we have D&D on Tuesday in our ancient Greek myth themed adventure where we are now getting into shenanigans in Sparta.
I'm real scared for my girlfriend.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
Everything will be fine. I didn't just walk into a nest of vipers.
Oh, the irony of
Only
that.
Well,
at
you are a
Red
nest of vipers.
In Soviet
Well,
Sparta.
Boom slings.
let's not split hairs here.
Hat.
I admire your aspirations. Now,
Ooh.
careful. It's going to get
That's
worse,
toxic.
folks.
Excuse me, venomous.
But unless there's anything else to add, any other announcements that I may be forgetting, does anybody else have anything? Any other shows that they're going to be on in different streams? Nope. Okay, then. So by the power vested in Sam, let's tell a freaking vampire story, shall we? Last time on Savannah by Night, our young kindred filtered into the historic seaport town, some by extravagant modes of transport, others by more humble, desperate means. One by one, they trickled into Elysium, the safe haven of their kind, at Wormslow Estate on the Isle of Hope. There, they were given the rules and expectations on how to conduct themselves, specifically, that no violence is to be done. Led to a lounge with a view, those that were hungry were fed. They were required to make formal introductions of themselves to the prince and seneschal, the two paramount authority figures within the county. Each one managed to find some manner of acceptance, some more conditional than others. However, one of the new arrivals, a Brujah named Max, decided he would throw down the gauntlet and attack the prince with nothing more than hope and grit. The attempt left the prince unmoved, and Max was immediately given the final death by a previously unnoticed woman in front of the entire court. As the pink mist of what used to be Max's ego begins to dissipate, Tabby and Poppy notice they were in the initial splash zone, as they have a small spackling of ruddy droplets on their clothing. Somehow, the rest of the group managed to avoid it entirely. The prince, however, has a fresh swath of red across his face. He'd been staring straight ahead, first through Max, then at the empty space he once briefly occupied. His eyes then flicker across all of you. What are you doing?
Kate is still young enough to habitually take a deep breath to steady herself, but remains composed.
Bitte Scheiße.
Abby just mouth agape is instead of like head down, does just kind of look back from what's left of Max to the prince. But whenever she looks at the prince, it is, I imagine they aren't locking eyes, but it's a very like, I see you, sir, type of line.
Cora's in this situation where she's trying to look towards the prince, but there's a body there that she doesn't necessarily want to view. So she finds herself looking up, but like kind of forcing herself to do so. The body language is saying, I want to leave now. Um,
So Artem first checks the suit. We did just get a new tracksuit.
Hmm.
Looks like we did not get anything on it, so feeling good about that. Not the first time he's seen someone disappear in a red mist. So while a little shocked, it's, you know,
Hmm.
something that he's seen before. The prince is looking at them. If he manages to catch his eye, he just kind of gives him a nod, like, I understand.
Now, those are your outward reactions. Do you have any internal thoughts that you would like to let the audience know about? Go ahead, Ted.
Abby recalls how she has been to two different courts, and the first day at each one has included a brutal execution. And while this doesn't inherently mean anything, she's beginning to wonder if that is a new aspect of court that she simply was not aware of before. Where if it's your first day, someone's got to die.
Cora can't help but picture a very particular bloody sword.
Artem
And
recalls the last time he saw something a little bit like this, and he's basically trying to map the laws of nature and the laws of the jungle with what's going on in front of him.
mhm.
And Kate thinks back to the last execution of court she saw. This one's easier to process because there was no room for sympathy. This was explicitly breaking rules, and judgment was easy.
Now, given each of you were told what the rules were, that violence will be met with violence, how are each of you reconciling with that in this moment? You don't have to be extensive, but if you have a thought, a surface thought.
Cora thinks of being face to face with a gun once for not following the rules, but she was a little stubborn in that moment, and someone came to her rescue. Here she's on her own. She's going to make sure she adheres as closely as she can, and she starts to attempt to regain her composure.
Tabby.
Abby recalls the many lessons that she's learned that are unique to her clan, and of how even if someone were exactly like Max in their intent, if she were to ever have the same drive as him, subterfuge, operate from the shadows, be far more covert, and you will not have the same thing happen to you.
Rules have carried the Camarilla forward for, what, 400 something years?
Closer to 5, but yes.
5.
Sorry, I interrupted a thought. You get...
Oh.
Okay.
You're still going, Kate? I'm sorry.
No,
didn't
that was
know
just
if I
her
was-
surface
okay.
level. No.
Okay.
Yeah, Artem is just thinking about the moments before his death. What led to that?
Now, when you say his death, we talking about
Artem's.
Max's? Artem's. Okay. As they all settle and calm in one manner or another, the prince, blood spattered as he is, resumes. Allow Mr. Rosenthal's sacrifice to serve as the prime example of what happens when you step outside my expectations for you. When you breach our highest ideals and the requirements of our society. It was made expressly clear that no violence is to happen here, under pain of violence being done to you. Now, each of you should understand that was no idle threat. It was a promise. And in Savannah, we keep our word. Before I continue, do you have anything to say to that?
Kate'll just nod.
But this segues to 2 important introductions. This is Valeria Vega, Sheriff of Savannah. When you step out of line, or a situation needs to be dealt with or investigated, she is the one that will be running it down, running you down. Do not give her reason to, and do not waste her time. It will not end well for you. As he trails off, you see him briefly glance down at the ruinous heap of man on the floor. Vega gives a puckered lip smack to the group, but the mirth of the expression does not show in her eyes. Hola. Do any of you say or do anything to this?
Light nod if eyes meet.
I just look her way. I don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'll smile and
nod
give a
either.
polite nod.
She's scanning each of you, but in a way that is analytical and predatory. I don't know if you ever heard of the way that the Apache attack helicopter was once described of a vessel that could be cresting over a mountain ridge and instantly identify and catalog and prioritize hundreds of targets. She's doing the same thing when scanning each and every one of you. How and where and what she would need to do to render each of you silent if she absolutely had to, or if the mood simply struck. Alden, the seneschal and previously described gentleman monster, yells out, Jethro! A compactly muscled man steps out from the crowd, barely a few steps away from you to begin with. Spiky blonde hair, hands seemingly in a permanent claw-like state, fangs visible, and a yellow glow to his eyes. Not quite as prominent as Alden's red glow, but far, far from natural. He doesn't walk up to the platform, but instead seems to circle you, face getting just a bit too close, as he audibly sniffs at each and every one of you, with a barely perceptible undertone of a rolling growl. A pass behind, a pass in front, clearly cataloging something intrinsic about all of you. While he does this, the prince continues. The second is Mr. Maplethorpe. He is charged with patrolling the swamps and outskirts. Anyone that does not have my blessing to be here is no one at all, and he is required to sniff them out and promptly snuff them out. If he does not recognize you, no one ever will. Do any of you react?
Cora is tensed up a bit, I'd imagine. Those who are inspecting her would notice that tightness in her shoulders, probably.
Is her posture somehow straighter than it was before?
Yeah, it is. And she already tends to hold herself a bit straight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What about the rest of you?
Standing still because I have a pretty good idea of what his role is officially at court.
Mm-hmm. Artem.
Artem doesn't like this one. He's probably just going to keep his eyes forward, but he may veer off and kind of look at him as he's like, passing by.
There will be a moment as he's passing in front of you where your eyes lock with the glow of his. And for a moment, for a brief moment, that glow reminds you of a different set of eyes. Another set of eyes that you thought you saw on your way down the road to the estate. But they're too small, too close together, especially when they're this close to you. There's not quite a snarl. It's not a challenge. It's almost like the clicking from Predator, where it's just that's the natural state their sound that their body makes simply by existing. And he steps by and he does the same with each and every one of you. Mapping your faces, your features, your quirks, the scent both the ones that you adorn yourselves with and the natural undertones that is you. When he finishes, he doesn't step back into the crowd. He stands off to the side from the platform, where there are a few of the guards who are already bringing out a tarp, but they're not moving to engage with the downed man. Not yet. The prince looks to the keeper. There's a nod. I have taken the liberty of explaining to each of your would-be Primogen who you are, that they would be expecting potentially a number to join them. I believe at this juncture that it would be proper for each of you to be shuttled off to your individual silos. Unless you had any other questions or concerns that you would like to raise in this moment. No? No one?
Could I speak to you before I go?
I would be happy to make the time, Miss Violante.
Thank you.
Now, there'll be nothing else. Please, if the agreed upon representatives from each clan would come to collect your new bloods, we can resume our normal, scheduled interaction. For each of you, minus Poppy, who her driver is replaced by Nico. Your drivers are the ones who collect each of you. Correction. Also for Artem, you are ushered by Jethro to follow him back to Alden. As the three of you walk outside, you're also joined by a woman in a fur-lined frock coat of her own. The scourge that is Jethro and the woman linger off to the side, giving you a bit of space. They remain within line of sight, but not oppressively close, as you begin to walk through the grounds of Elysium. Now, you may not have the full scope and understanding of this Georgia. Given the state and age of the trees, the state of the house, the grounds, the size of it, you know that this is at least a century or two old. That it has stood for a great long while and has been very, very well maintained. Before we get to that, do you have a...
That's a clarification question.
Yes.
Is this all of us walking the grounds or
No.
Artem?
Just Artem.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarification on.
You guys all stay inside.
These will all be happening simultaneously. It's just you and Alden as you're walking through the woods off the trail. And you can see the density of the forestry beyond the manicured road of willows. He seems to be allowing you to breathe and decompress by maybe giving you something, a hint of familiar.
Arm definitely appreciates that. What is the eyes situation now looking around?
You don't see anything just this moment. Now, do you wish to say anything to him, or are you waiting for him to start?
I'll wait for him.
He leads you through, but after a while, he sort of seems to let you find your own footholds to begin to explore your new space. But after allowing this to go on for a while, so you met the lupine.
I have. I not many of them. As I said, I don't know if there was just an understanding between her and or between them and Zoya, but or perhaps they were really afraid of her. But I only saw them maybe 3 times. The last time was obviously the most dangerous.
It's funny the way that you can negotiate a deal when all other sides are terrified of you. She'd been roaming those woods a very, very long time. And Garu, they may be resilient, but they don't live much longer than a man if they manage to make it that far in the first place. Entire generations of their kind could come and go without ever realizing that they shared the woods with her. The fact that she allowed it was a kindness, one that she did not need to extend.
They are learning that now, I think.
It's easy to start with kindness. They forget that it can be taken away. You see, tonight, we start with manners. How does it work out when someone decides to wake a monster that was willing to stay quiet?
Not well, clearly.
Hmm. I hope you keep that lesson to you.
I'll make as little noise as I can. I think I've been taught well to live off the land, I suppose.
Hmm.
I shouldn't be a drain on your resources.
Well, that's good to hear. Tell me, who was your companion that you were supposed to come here with?
Her name was Natalia. She was another like me.
Hmm.
Sired. I never got an exact time, but not long before.
A sibling of sorts.
I think, you know, when you get a new dog and it's got a lot more energy than you thought. And you get another one so that it has someone to play with. I think it was a similar situation.
You see a long, long pause on his features before he just uh, adorable. A shame that the pair was split up then.
Yes.
You took care of one another. Mm. Before you became what you are now, what was your skill set? How did you make your way in the world?
Well, I was a miner, I suppose. Not for very long. I took more lucrative work. I'd rather not continue that path if I had a choice, but
Mm.
you know, I mean, look at me.
Mm.
I can be intimidating if I need to.
Mm.
I can make people understand that they need to do something or be somewhere. I also picked up some other skills. I actually built my own home on Zoya's land.
Hmm. As impressive as a physical specimen as you may be, physicality is easily fooled. Look at Zoya. Tiny, diminutive. Could destroy a Garo 10 times her size. The flick of her wrist. You're young, fresh. There are those here that would treat you as but a leaf on the wind. So while I don't doubt that you could put a bit of fear into a mortal, among us, well, you saw what happened to Max. But you said you built your own home. I'm going to assume with very few, if any, tools.
Only those that I made myself. Well, I was able to get some. I think you would find them pretty rudimentary.
I will make you a deal. When I say a deal, it's part of your condition for being allowed to stay here anyways. I'm being kind. I have an older house on my land that could be used to, that you could renovate while you stay in it until you get your bearings. Storms roll through here often. You may have your work cut out for you. I have one other condition. I have a young child of my own. She also needs another puppy to run out some of her energy.
Hmm.
She's young, angry. In many ways, she may try to treat you as a scratching post.
Hmm.
Consider that the cost of living. Do you accept these terms?
I do.
Good. Do you have any questions for me?
I plan on seeking out my sister. I don't know what that will entail. I don't know where that will take me. May she also find a home here.
Let us discuss that after you've spent more than a night here,
Sure.
when I have decided whether or not you are welcome, that you are not a liability.
All right.
Why don't you consider that a long-term goal? It's not about impressing me. It's about not going below neutral. Now, shall we go meet more of your kin?
Sort of looks around. Let's do it.
As you look around, now you finally see those eyes again. And they are watching you.
There's a lot more people than I'm used to dealing with.
People.
You know what I mean.
I think you don't know what you mean. And he whistles with his fingers, and a far too large black dog runs out from the brush and quickly comes to heel, standing in front of him. It's not wagging its tail. It's not growling. It's simply at attention. It's not as big as you or anything like that. But this is no mere puppy. He reaches down and he just scratches behind the ears. This is Orion.
Sort of put my hand out, let him get a good sniff.
Strangely, unlike Jethro, it's not as vicious sounding as it sniffs and begins to circle around you. It doesn't allow you to touch him, but he doesn't recoil. He sniffs around you, sniffs at your feet, sniffs at the hands. And there's a moment where it actually tries to stand up on its hind leg, balancing the front paw on your arm as it leans and tries and sniff around the neck. But not in a way that's friendly. In a way, it feels a little like Jethro. It is remembering you in case it has to.
Do I think this is probably his ghoul?
I'm not sure if Artem knows what that is yet.
Yeah, he might not actually.
Mm. I don't think he has the verbiage for it right now. But you can try asking him something about it.
Guess he'll looking at the dogs that's checking him out. Back to the Primogen. This your they don't usually get this big, right?
Wolves are often larger than people think they are, and sometimes smaller. But when you give them our blood, they can be so much more, especially when you do it for long enough and you tend to them as Zoya would her forest. I don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing for the time being. Zoya, from what I remember, all the creatures of the forest were her eyes and her ears. Be patient. Don't fuck up. And maybe you can learn something of that. And he's going to gesture you along to where Jethro and the dark-haired woman are standing. Now, unless you have anything to add there, that can be a good fade-off point. That work for you?
Yeah.
I will give you a name for the woman. Tessa Stratton.
Can you spell that?
TESSASTATTON.
Okay.
The interaction is civil. You get the idea that she's far more cultured and civilized compared to Jethro, more in line with Alden, the gentleman monster. And as you begin to talk with your clanmates, perhaps the first time from anyone that isn't directly in your bloodline, in the open air, away from perceived dangers, we move on to our next one. Unless you had any other thoughts. Okay. Cora.
Yes.
Leland escorts Cora outside to an open air gazebo overlooking the water. While it is obviously kept in good condition, it is weathered with character. There is a woman standing at the center of it, two others sitting on the bench. She is all sharp angles with cheekbones that could cut, red lips, jet black hair, a white tapered tapered in suit dress with lapels and silver buttons extends nearly all the way to her ankles, where Cora can see heels that match those same buttons. She delicately holds a silver lace parasol. Um, Primogen Matilda Swafford, I would like to present to you Miss Cora Violante.
Cora's not sure whether to hold out a hand or bow. So she'll do just a little, very subtle dip.
There's a little sound of laughter, but it's not at you. It's not derisive. It's more just unexpected. And a little bit of a surprise that you would greet her in such a way. She closes the parasol and then leans forward on it like a cane. Well, aren't you a surprise, Miss Violante?
Hopefully a pleasant one.
Remains to be seen. Tell me, what did Essen say about this place?
Not much, only that he agreed with my choice in the end.
Hmm.
Not that it mattered either way.
So why did you choose here?
Well, it was different enough from home. And not such a big place, but not too small. A good place to make a start of things.
Hmm. Was Frankfurt a long time home, or just the latest one?
The latest one, although it can feel like a long time.
Is that where you returned?
Not precisely, but it's where I spent my first moments.
So I take it then you are exceptionally young.
Yes, uh, I tend to lose track of time, but maybe only about 7 months ago at most.
Mm. Would you say that losing time is something that happens often? Something that is debilitating?
Mm. Debilitating, no. When I was home with my sire, uh, our conversations flowed in a way that sometimes they began before they ended, but not in the usual way. I'm not sure exactly how to put it.
Mm.
It wasn't disconcerting then, though. It felt natural.
It is, unfortunately, incredibly common for those of our blood, the broken mirrors, that we are not all so high functioning. The questions I ask are designed to see if you are a person, someone to bring into the family, someone to help, to guide, to benefit from, to benefit the clan, or if you are a liability.
I see. Well, what other questions do you have for me then?
We will be discussing over time your complication. We all have one. And we will be figuring out how to work with it, or even how to use it. And if you are a liability because of it, we will deal with that too.
Cora's attempting to assess internally
Mm-hmm.
how much these other members of her clan may be willing to help with the fact that it feels like maybe she's experiencing a bit more of an unmooredness lately.
Mm.
She's gonna maybe test the waters.
Mm.
The drive here into Elysium, it was beautiful. The oaks. I saw them how they've been before, I think, all at
She
once.
mm. She seems interested and invested, but she's having trouble placing it in any particular category. And then off to your right, Leland steps around. Apologies. Uh, I have heard of such things before. Um, at least some of it. Perhaps we could have a more fulsome conversation about what it is and how it works.
Leland, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Mm. He seems to look to you and then look to the Primogen a little nervously. And she just gives a little silent nod. That can happen in due time. You have been accepted here. I am not here to decide otherwise unless you give reason to. The next steps are figuring out what you're going to do now that you are here.
Yes. Uh, is this the sort of thing where you have work for me, or am I more of a free agent?
Can be a bit of both, depending on what your skill set is. What can you do for me, Miss Violante? For example, she points to one woman on her right, a more elegant and very tasteful dress, who stands up. Grace is my sometimes what we call a clan whip, second in command. Deals with situations if I am unavailable. She helps maintain order within our ranks. Not an easy task in a clan that is inherently chaotic. That is what she does. That's what she brings to the table. She reaches forward, Grace, and offers you her hand.
I
Welcome
extend
to
mine.
Welcome to Savannah, dearie.
Pleasure to meet you, Grace.
Well, I hope so. And she gives you this little wink that you don't quite know if it's genuine or if it's just, I'm going to kill you later.
Okay.
Jury's still out. The other woman, who, during all of this, you don't know if you've been hearing it this whole time or if it's just been hearing it up here. The repetitive metallic scrape of a Zippo opening and closing repeatedly.
Mm.
And when you do look down at her hand, she is in fact doing that. But you're not sure if she has been doing it the whole time. This is Nina. And when she steps forward, the scraping sound stops. Her posture is more akin to yours, ramrod straight. A business-like longer coat. And she reaches for your hand.
I shake.
I'm what's called a deputy or a hound, if you like. I work for the sheriff.
I was close friends with the deputy back home.
Oh, now that I would like to hear about and how that worked out.
Hmm. We had a bit of an interesting first meeting, but ended up becoming a nice relationship.
Now, out of character. When you say relationship, how are you stressing that word?
Um, I think that Cora's got that tension still from their last meeting, or their goodbye, I guess,
Mhm.
before she stepped onto the plane. And it's perhaps as she lets go of the word,
Mhm.
there's almost just a trace of like not quite dreaminess to it, but like a maybe. Like there's a question mark at the end.
Penny in the air.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone senses anything about it, which would be a long con if they could, they're not saying or showing it. The Primogen resumes. So what did you do before this life?
I'm glad you asked me about before. During, I didn't do much of anything except enjoy Frankfurt. But and before, I was a professional driver, so, mostly sales.
Hmm. Hmm. You see Grace give a look to Matilda. And they, oh, we could introduce her to Titus. That could be fun.
And
And oh, go ahead.
I don't mean a taxi service or anything like that. Just finer vehicles.
Oh, then we definitely need to introduce her to Titus. Hmm. She actually does lift a hand from the cane-like treatment of the parasol and just, oh, I think we could arrange that. Could you run ahead and see if he's even here tonight? Of course. And Grace trundles off, click-clacking along the wooden boards that make up the path to the gazebo.
Titus, is he a driver as well?
He used to be, but now he focuses on creating the things that people drive.
Huh.
He's not one of ours, but
Designers can be interesting people to work with. Sometimes they're the best, sometimes they are the absolute worst.
oh, well, then I won't spoil it for you either way. You could potentially find work just as driving, courier, just to do something familiar. But you'll have some time to get your bearings before there are heavier expectations put on you.
Cora,
Find out.
when something familiar is
Hmm.
uttered, Cora goes,
Do you actually make that sound like mid-sentence to her?
Cora can't help herself. Of course she does.
Mm. She stops and just, did I amuse you, neonate?
Apologies, that was the choice of words.
Well, then help me understand.
I'm supposed to be selective about familiarity.
Hmm. And Leland chimes in. Do you find that this has something to do with your... He looks to the Primogen to use her word, complication.
Yes,
Hmm. Well, maybe we can figure that out then. There might be ways that we can... Yes, I think we can figure that out.
that's encouraging.
Hmm. Nina kind of just feeling a little useless here. She's met you. She's not contributing anything. You just hear the scrape flick of the Zippo off and on as she walks away, and you can hear that subtle hiss of a cigarette being lit up as
Hmm.
she walks away without saying anything at all. Well, we'll give you time to figure out your bearings. But in the meantime, do you have any questions for me?
Are there any house rules that I should be aware of, in particular to us?
The traditions apply to us just the same as anyone else. With the extra overlay of your complication cannot be what defines you. If you find a way to work with it, to make it work for you, excellent. But if it becomes the problem, we will start having very different conversations.
I understand.
Good.
If I have any say in it, it's something that I'll integrate into what it means to be me.
Good to hear. Now, unless there's anything else. Leland, please show our new friend here back into the house. I wish to enjoy the night air by myself for a bit. Of course, Primogen. And he starts to just sort of gesture you along.
I'll follow his lead. As we're leaving, do you think I said too much?
No. Yeah. She just tends to take us very seriously. He leans in a little bit more conspiratorially. Just before her, there was no Malkavian Primogen.
Is that so?
Takes a lot to bring order to that much chaos. No one was up to the task until her.
Cora respects that.
As you start to walk back into the main house, do you have any other thoughts or questions or comments or internal monologue?
Cora is thinking a bit about how that went. The hands she shook, the expression on her face. Thinking almost, am I rusty? Was so long of a break the wrong thing? But no, surely not. And how's the air tonight?
Perhaps because it's out at Wormslow rather than in the city proper.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting a little bit of that salt marsh smell, but a rolling tone to it as the air from the ocean continuously rolls over land.
She thinks about that. That's nice. That's new.
New is good.
New is good.
So we can pan out from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tabby. Your driver, Baxter, brings you upstairs to the observational railing that circles the entire main hall where the vast majority of kindred had been present. Against one of the walls is a man propped against it, arms crossed, imposing and overlarge. His skin is a deeply pale, mottled wax. But he's not the one that speaks to you. You see a man in a rough, low-collar, dark leather jacket, like a suede that's long lost its luster. He appears bald, with elongated ears, skin that looks like a cross between dirty, unprimed drywall and the dusty, cracked countenance of a dried-up lake bed. The semblance of a beard trying to poke through from it all. Intelligence beams from the eyes. They turn to Tabby. The lake bed softly smiles. Hello, Tabitha. Thank you for joining me.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You see him leaning forward, sort of perched on the railing, looking down at the rest of the party. You're just listening to the murmurs and walla of the crowd below, indistinct chatter. You occasionally see one of his ears flicker, like it's picking up on something. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a twitch. Please, come over here.
She does so.
Now, we all heard the story that you told the prince. One of the parts that you are not sharing.
Not too much. I was admittedly a little quite frightened to even say what I did about the Sabbat.
Hmm.
But one thing that the real reason I'm here, I don't quite know. But I do know what I want while I'm here. I want to make sure that Angel's all right, if possible. But in case that's not doable. The first part was, for certain, a bit dramatic and not quite accurate, but it was truthful. I do want to be of use here. I do want to have a place in Savannah, at least as long as I'm here, which could be, I don't know how long, but I think it's safe to assume for the foreseeable.
Why were you sent here, of all places? There are cities that are just as easy to reach by rail, by car, by plane. Simply walking over a mountain and you could be somewhere new. Why here?
Abby's eyes, like, she kind of comes back out of a revelry and turns to the drywall individual. That's
No, the
right.
drywall individual is the one speaking to you right now.
No, right. But she'd kind of been looking down
Mhm.
where he was looking.
Fair enough.
That's right. I was told to find Garrett.
You see the two Nosferatu share a bit of a look as your Primogen places his hands on the rail and stands up more straight. Ah, speaking of Sabat, Garrick was killed by them some time ago. He was
Oh,
the sheriff before Vega.
Garrett was killed. Well, I don't know what to do about that. What do I do with that information then?
What do you want to do with it? You're here now. Doesn't matter why you came. Everyone has come here from somewhere else, whether they admit to it or not. Very few were made here, at least in comparison. The reasons that bring them here are all different. And the reasons that did bring them here don't always matter. You get to choose what you do now.
Abby kind of steps away from the railing and just walks a little further into the upstairs, just away from sight from anyone who might have been looking up from below. All of my life, I've been a fool and a victim. I don't want to be anymore of either of those. And I want to do what will help me be stronger and be smarter. Max, for example, looking back down to where the body probably has now been cleaned up from.
The stain is still there on the platform, but the man is not. There's still the scattered shells of expended rounds.
I didn't know him, but in a way, he was neither. I don't need to be strong enough to do what he attempted. But it must be more than that. I at least was smart enough to not try what he did. But I can improve that too.
It would be hard to do worse.
Pretty hard.
So you've been telling me what you want. You've missed a few steps.
Of course.
We trade in information. It's a clan trait. I didn't even give you my name. And I've learned so much about you already. That's something we're going to have to fix if you're going to be of use to us, to your clan. I will pretend, for now, that this oversight is due to the shock and desperation of your situation, rather than you being too young and too naive to realize the situation. So I need to give you two things that you're going to remember and consider. The first is my name, Mason.
Pleased to
Second,
meet you, sir.
pleasure. Second, why should we add another mouth to feed? What can you do for us that we can't already do for ourselves? How can you lighten the load that we all have to carry?
A tentative smile kind of creeps over the corner of one side of her mouth. Well, with all due respect, sir, I do not know the situation that you have here. I imagine that you might have an idea. I would be happy to fulfill a niche that you might wish filled and others might be less eager to. I don't pretend to know what the rest of our kind is capable of that I'm not, but I do have at least a small set of trained skills.
And those would be?
While, of course, I do not have any space where it would be within my right to feed, I'm quite capable of feeding myself. And I'm also quite capable of getting into places where one shouldn't be.
Feeding yourself isn't impressive. That is the expectation of self-sufficiency. If you can't match that, Max will look like a massage compared to what will happen to you after. To your second point, getting into places that others shouldn't be. Now we're talking. Of course, all sorts of people make those boasts. Maybe we'll put that to the test. What else you got?
Well, sir, I would, in an attempt to immediately address the kind lesson and information you gave me, I would not dare be impertinent for your kindness that you are already showing me. But I wonder if this is in itself a test. And I would ask for more knowledge about me. Might I make a request?
You can try.
I would like a place to stay.
Traditionally, all accepted Nosferatu are permitted within the Warrens. I take it you had such a place back in Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
We could find a place for you there. You could be taught, made more than this meager presentation before me. But you need to impress quickly. Being what we are, any little liability we create is magnified. If one of them, he looks down at the crowd, all the normies, if one of them screws up in public, the amount of cognitive dissonance that they can fall back on is insane. The plausible deniability. You and I do not have that luxury. Anything you do above ground in open view is infinitely more noticeable simply because of this. And he scrapes a nail audibly down what sounds like like a chalkboard slash dry like lake bed. We don't fit in easily. Doesn't matter that many of us are able to adopt the illusion of another face. Once a camera comes out, it doesn't matter. They will see the truth. Maybe not right away, but they will. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Good.
One thing that does come to mind if you're wondering of what does make me capable, what does stand out. There was a time fairly early into my new living situation where I was tasked to break into a fellow kindred's home, and I was able to find some of his belongings that were so sensitive that when they were brought to court, he became a social outcast. Only reason anyone ever knew that it was me is because the person who I did it for exposed me as a type of brag. Otherwise, scot free.
Otherwise is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yes,
You
sir.
didn't get away scot-free. Everyone knew what you did. You were instantly made suspect number one in every subsequent break-in or scandal that followed. You also failed a critical test. Vet who you're working for.
If I could
This,
go back, I would have silenced her.
ah, while I understand the impulse, everyone again would have looked at you as at least, if not first, then second suspect. If it wasn't the pariah that they would go after first, you would be too visible. And the damage had already been done. I see now we have a lot of work to do with you. You will do no jobs of any kind or any kindred until you tell me about it, so that I can tell you where your mistakes are.
Yes, sir.
Good. Do you have any questions?
Not at this time, sir.
You notice somewhere, if not at the start of the conversation or somewhere within the length and breadth of it, Baxter had long since fucked right off. Maybe from the first syllable, you don't know, but he just Homer Simpsoned out into the bushes, wanting nothing to do with whatever this was or wasn't. He got you to where you needed to be, and as far as he was concerned, he's done. But the other man, the bulwark taking up the wall to himself, he's still there. And he's been eyeing you very carefully, listening to every word. He's never snorted, never gave any derision, but he just watched you. That there is Cyrus. He's one of the oldest kindred in this city. Someone doesn't live that long suffering fools. I won't have to sort you out if you mess up. If he catches you, that'll be the end of it. You won't have to worry about the prince or the sheriff. We clean up our own house. Am I understood?
Yes, sir.
Good.
And she does she does not face the hulking ogre against the wall, but she does kind of try and sidelong glance, see if their eyes catch.
In a way that you probably wish you hadn't. The whole body does not budge. In a way, it's like a statue, a stone gargoyle affixed to the wall. And it's like that sensation of a mannequin when they look at you no matter where you are. As you move, the head doesn't move, the eyelids don't shift in any way. There's no flick of the head. Just the eyes go from straight to that unnerving roll in your direction, fixed on you, and then back to static. You get the impression that Tabby is free to walk away for now. Or you can stay up there and watch.
Abby does not leave the space,
Mm-hmm.
but she does kind of walk over to another part of the railing and just start eyeing the crowd, seeing if she can see any of her fellow new members to court that haven't left yet, starting to remember faces. And above the table, thoughts that Tabby has going through her head. She has one head. the Nosferatu curse ain't that bad.
I'll illustrate a clan book later.
But one thing that she is thinking about is that Mr. Mason might be teaching her more than he thinks he is. And that one thought that she has in her head is that he's teaching her a paradox. He's teaching her to tell him everything and to be above board and reveal everything about her at a word. But he's everything that she doesn't and everything that she will manage to do from now on, that she's able to know and keep and do successfully without his knowledge. Treacherous if it were to be discovered, absolutely. Would be valuable and would be strength. And she just continues to look out over the crowd.
But parents often don't realize until it's far, far too late is that when you are good at picking out your child's lie and you hold it against them, you teach them step by step, little by little, to become better liars. It could be that he's ignorant to that fact, but I would invite you to consider no one becomes Primogen without knowing the game. But maybe that's a thought that will occur to Tabby a different night.
Oh, she'll tell him everything.
Okay. We'll see how it works out. Fading out from that. Last but not luxuriously last or least, long day. All right. Skipping through Toreador, whom we will assume that Nico had ushered her off screen, and we'll pick up that little scene next week. Kate, your driver, Misha, leads you to a large, well-adorned library study, where a man with a well-fitted pea coat, a close-shaved head, and beard is already waiting, wrists clasped behind his back. Misha says, "May I present Primogen Noah Halsey." Primogen, Kate Fulton.
Kate'll hold out her hand to shake it.
He reaches out, and it's a very curt but professional handshake, the kind that you would expect among your own kind. There's nothing, there's no real undertone to it that maybe you could expect. It's just very professional from start to finish. There's none of the, I'm a big, strong man, I'm going to try and crush the girl's hand type of energy to it. It's just, we're all Ventrue here. Speaking of which, he is not the only one in the room. And he will introduce them in due time. First, allow me to welcome you among our ranks, Ms. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Halsey.
Now, while I have gotten some word from your sire, time for him to speak for you is over. You must speak for yourself. Impress me yourself. Why are you here?
I'm here to learn, to make a name for myself, for myself.
To learn what?
To learn the why, to learn the how of power.
I take it you were left with a question. You will not find the answer to it here, tonight. You may not find it for several years.
It's a good thing we've got time.
Assuming you pay attention and you're learning the game. The gentleman tonight thought that he had eternity before him, that he had all the time in the world, until he didn't. Never assume that the next second is a given.
Of course.
So you're here to learn. Fine. But you're going to have to be of use while you do so.
Certainly.
How can you be of use to me?
Before the change, I worked on the Hill, managed campaigns, helped run staff. After the change, after learning, you could call me a whip for fledglings, a courier. But as you well know, with our clan, most of that time was spent learning and slowly being given more trust.
Yes and no. Were you given trust or a rope to hang yourself with?
Both.
Good answer. Doing what we do is not about rule. It's not about power. That is a cheap, facile answer. Better left a Toreador.
It's about the noble obligation.
It's about understanding the system, the situation, your relationship to it, where you can put a thumb on a scale to cause the greatest effect, the least cost to yourself, the situation, or your interests. Noble obligation needs to be served, but it cannot be served if you are not observing how the game works and the costs therein. Here in Savannah, every member of the clan has a task, a role within the machine. Yes, we have others that we work with so that we are not entirely single points of failure. But at the same time, remove one of us, and the system doesn't work the way it should. I run security all over this county. Every gallery, every event, the prison, the airport, this very building. I have eyes and ears everywhere. So if you are failing, I will hear about it. That is how I control situations, how I help bring order where there would be madness. That is my role. But do not mistake me for an armchair general. I once held Vega's job, and I have not dulled with age. The only thing that has dulled are my patience. He then turns to a gentleman who steps forward. Dark, rich, purple suit. Lexington Rudlow. Actually, I have to check my notes to make sure that's the right name because it's been a bit.
It's the lawyer, then I think you're correct.
I did not write him down on this. Love that for me. Oh well, we'll go with that for now. Whereas Primogen Halsey oversees the vast majority of security interests all over the city, I dominate our legal ones. I make sure some of our problems get lost in paperwork or other things get through paperwork far faster than they should. I create, manage, and disappear problems of that nature. Primarily, I do it for all of Savannah, where I can, but primarily us and our interests of maintaining our order. And everyone knows it because I want them to. Welcome to Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Rudlow.
And as he steps back, a younger woman steps forward. Light red hair pulled back in a ponytail. Wearing a suit, but with the jacket hanging off the shoulders, with her sleeved arm, her dress shirt arms clad and just sort of crossed. If you've ever seen the Yakuza movies, it's kind of a similar look. She just pleasure. Jean Corwin.
Nice to meet you, Miss Corwin.
I oversee many of the prince's direct interests. I will not tell you what they all are, beyond the fact that in all the ways that matter, he owns the entire county. Every blade of grass, every plot of land, every street. There's a lot of ground to cover, both the financial and legal, and sheer people involved. While I am not the only one that is directly involved in such things, that is my place in the machine. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, I have matters to attend to. She nods her farewells to the other men in the room. She passes by you and stops. So you're sort of side to side, but facing different directions. He goes, when all this calms down, we'll find time to talk properly.
I'm looking forward to it.
And she click-clacks out, taking out a phone and beginning to demonstrate that she is, in fact, dealing with everything all over town. Your Primogen beckons over another. Pleasure, Nathaniel Innsbruck.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Innsbruck.
Compared to the others, he looks like if somehow a wolf and a shark was a person wearing a suit.
So he would fit in DC.
Mm. All black suit, black shirt, black tie. Well, my place in the machine, like Mr. Rudlow, I do apply it to everyone in this city. But our kind gets priority should that become necessary. I make the messes go away. The things that those outside the masquerade are not supposed to see, not supposed to know. I and the people that work for me expunge such evidence. But I urge you to consider something. He kind of gives a little conspiratorial smile to those gathered in the room. After a while, I stopped taking money. It's easy to get. The currency of our kind is favor,
Far more valuable currency.
when used correctly, and saved up for a very rainy day. Should you need my services, I would be happy to provide them. For a fee, of course.
Of course.
Now, depending on the nature of things, that could just be a simple heads up about something. But depending on how bad, how egregious it is, the necessity of the situation, well, seller's market. You could see how that might make someone unruly, less willing to be a political problem. And as the conversation is going back and forth on this, before I get to the next part of this, do you have any questions you want to ask them? I know you were hit with a lot, and
Kate feels like she's just been on the speed dating of job interviews.
Actually, I'll add something I was meaning to round back to. You see, as the Primogen resumes, how each piece on the board contributes to the game. How will you?
That's Halsey asking. Who was most in need of assistance?
That's one angle. And maybe there could be an opportunity for you simply job shadowing to get your feet wet, to cut your teeth on something and see what happens. But I want you to be more deliberate than that. You don't have to have an answer right away.
I think I'd like to speak with Miss Corwin and Mr. Rudlow a bit more.
I'm sure that could be arranged. There are others not in this room that contribute in their own way. We'll have a proper sit down one evening so you can meet others. But understand, you are meant to impress. They'll go looking for everyone else to find where you fit in. Conjure your own answer. Now, does Kate have any internal thoughts or questions?
Every conversation with a Ventru is like a chess match, and there is a right and wrong answer to everything. She's taking a look at the board, trying to decide the right next move.
And what is she thinking of the state of play? She has seen a Ventru prince, not counting her own sire. She's seen the Primogen. She's seen the tools he has at his disposal. How there is a clear sense of cohesion, or at least outwardly there is.
Her inclination is to go speak with Miss Corwin more. What she does feels familiar in a way, though she knows this court still operates differently.
Is there any nervousness or anxiety that she's feeling and or trying to mask?
A little bit. Because of her position in DC. And this is getting pushed to the deep end. She doesn't have the luxury, which is the point of being here. And she knows every bit of this conversation is a test.
Knowing that, how does she feel she's doing so far?
Passing. I don't know if anyone's getting any gold stars yet.
It's a little like if orientation day had a little bit of a spoken word exam by the end of it, just to see if you still retain entry. And so far, you have not been ejected, but the semester's yet to start. It can still get worse. And as that conversation begins to, I assume, round down, unless you have any other things you want to verbalize.
Just some more conversations to have moving forward.
Okay. I think here would be a good time for us to take a break, to go and get some bloody refreshments if we need them.
I'm all out, so it's perfect timing.
All right. We'll see you soon, folks.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back. So, as we left off, all of our little baby vampires were just meeting their clanmates, their Primogen, and finding out life kind of sucks now, and not in all the fun ways. That every conversation among kindred is a high wire act that many of them are unprepared for, simply by virtue of perhaps the one that made them was not a political animal, or perhaps they were made with something other in mind, or too briefly for them to learn those lessons. But that's why they're here. Let's see what they pick up on. As each of the introductions to your core clanmates begin to ebb, it's becoming clear that the festivities are beginning to reach an end. The crowds are beginning to filter out, first discreetly, then more broadly. You can only imagine what the logjam is like as cars leave the main gate to rejoin the main road and scatter back out into the night to their individualized domains. There are stragglers, of course, waiting for the traffic to dwindle down so they can make their own escapes. Some are enjoying quiet chatter among themselves. Some are just enjoying a moment of solitude. Some just want to be left alone together. But as each of you begin to be left among the stragglers for a moment in the main hall, nearer to seats or wherever you choose, you have time to reconnect as a group more privately, should you all choose.
Is Corwin, not
Mm.
Cora, Corwin amongst the stragglers?
She's not in the main hall, but she is en route to the door if you're trying to catch her.
Yeah.
So you're trying to click clack after her?
hmm
Okay.
How long do we have until sunrise?
Enough time that just doesn't matter right now.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like hey, here's my card, see you tomorrow. But yeah, I'll try to catch up to her.
Mm-hmm. And how do you get her attention?
So you wanted to have a conversation?
She stops and she's clearly typing out a text message while still looking at you. Well, I didn't mean we could have a full conversation right now, but we could start. What is it that you want to know that you didn't learn up there?
I want to know if you've got a place for me.
If I have a place for you.
Well, I know you work for the prince, but if you oversee, you must have a spot where an enterprising young Ventru could be of use, where she could impress.
Were I to do that, I would be taking a bit of a risk on you. You understand that?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever I wind up, it'll be a risk, just by nature of my newness.
Well, at least you're self-aware, which is more than can be said for some.
It'll kind of glance back at the splatter.
You see one of the security guys with a mop kind of just slowly trying to scrub this thing clean, but you just see this look of, I'm gonna have to throw this out and get a new one, aren't I?
Was it on like hardwood or like a carpet?
As in, this was on the platform itself.
Oh, okay.
You get the impression maybe that's there not as a just, I must uplift the prince above all, as much as that's gonna be a problem area, and we need to be able to get rid of it and
Like
replace
putting in
it
big
easy.
carpet squares you can just rip out and
Yeah.
pop down.
It's like the really regal version of those sort of rubbery play mats that you put down for kids that are almost like a giant like puzzle pieces.
We have those in an alphabet.
Yeah.
Should definitely try a power wash for that.
Well, that at that she actually kind of starts to laugh. Power wash doesn't do much for bullet holes. We tried. I wish I could say it was the first time that's happened.
Wish I could say it was the first time I've seen that happen.
How close were you to the splash zone last time?
Oh, I was front row at the amusement park.
That'll do it.
Though it was a sword, so we didn't have to worry about bullet holes.
Ooh, different mess though.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the risk I run into. I told you whose interests I help manage.
Mm-hmm.
Introducing a new risk into that may not be permitted.
Right.
But the next time we talk, we'll see if we can find a place. At least a ground floor opportunity and go from there.
I can give you my number so you don't have to lurk around Elysium to find me.
I'll have to do that next time.
All right.
Your number's about to change. But until next time, I am here quite often. Good night, Miss Fulton.
Good morning, Miss Corwin.
Good luck.
Thanks.
And she trundles on out to whatever next array of appointments, frustrations, disappointments that she has to get to. I'll let everyone have an opportunity to chase someone down if they're looking for them. And I think Tabby looked like they were about to go first.
After spending just most of Elysium's time observing, trying to remember faces, Tabby, in whatever way that they might have distanced themselves, Tabby will return to wherever she can find Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason, sir.
You're gonna go poke that beehive again. Okay.
Yes.
All right. This time you see him leaning back against the railing, having a conversation with another of your kind. Wherever Cyrus is, you do not know. And maybe that's for the best.
Abby will wait her turn, but she will make herself visible.
The individual he's talking with is a woman, slightly more emaciated, skeletal, tiny bit anyways. Skin stretched over too small of a face, or rather too little skin stretched over a face. Teeth, this awful twisted arrangement that no amount of dental work could ever hope to fix. Outside of a lot of dremeling. She's wearing this beautiful, luxurious ball gown. Sparkly and tassely. Looks like something that you might wear when being unveiled as a beauty queen. She even has the updo to match. But it is clearly a wig. She's talking animatedly with Mason. And there's just snap head turn of like when a bird is from standstill and it just snaps in your direction. And there's a tilt to her head. Oh, hello. You must be Tabby.
Yes, ma'am. I believe I've been introduced uh, publicly. So
Mhm. She extends this spindly little limb in your direction in a dainty little, like, lacy wrist glove. And she just sort of expectantly holds it out for you to either take, to kiss, or whatever you decide to do at that moment.
trying to be just in general aware of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Tabby will kind of like more cup the hand rather than grasp it,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of do a gentle eyes down, like head nod towards it without the kiss, but like the
Mm-hmm.
mimed adherence with a slight bow.
Mm-hmm. It's at the very least a show of deference.
Yes.
Okay. And she gives this sort of little tittering laugh, covering her mouth with her other hand. It's like, oh, Tabby, someone with manners. How nice.
It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am.
Hmm.
Might I know, forgive me, so few names have been revealed to me. Might I know the pleasure of yours?
Oh, everyone just calls me Petra, darling.
Petra. Thank you, ma'am.
Hmm.
It is an honor, I'm sure.
It would be for you, yes. Mason, honey, we'll talk later. See you soon. And she just, in the same way that Kate or Jean would walk away, there's that confident click-clacking stride as she disappears around a corner. Now, something that you, of all people, would be considering right now is how did she get that dress all the way from the Warrens to Elysium without it being all mucky?
Hmm.
Did she? Or is there another way to do that? As you're considering this, Mason crosses his arms, still leaning back against the railing. What can I do for you?
So sorry to interrupt, sir. I hope I did not.
Nothing pressing.
I don't wish to take up any more of your evening, but I would ask you, sir, if there's anyone that you would point me towards uh, in order to immediately start following the type of self-improvement that you seek for me, sir. Either for information or for general knowledge of our and other circles, or for betterment in general, sir.
It would be best for you to have a certain amount of self-directed improvement rather than me giving you every answer. You're
Understood,
not
sir.
going to learn anything that way. However, I'll give you a starting place for you to start figuring things out. Something to consider. He turns around and he does get a little conspiratorially close to you as he points down to some of your new bloods who have begun to filter back into the building. An opportunity the training wheels of those who are also young and new that you can learn of and about and from with lower risk. However, The very young, as we've proven in our previous conversation, are prone to mistakes, miscalculations. The trick then becomes whether or not you can get close to them, learn about them, without you yourself being implicated in whatever situations they may instigate. So if you want to find a use, that's a good place to start.
Thank you, sir. And in terms of jobs, as you mentioned, and tasks and favors, you had not prevented me from doing them, sir. It was more to always let you know what I have. Just
You
to
will
be
not
clear
do
that
them until you have told me about them.
Thank you, sir, for the clarification.
I do not want to prevent your growth. But I also don't want your naivety to be our problem.
Me neither, sir.
Good. When you run into a situation where something is offered to you, we will discuss how it is to your benefit and how it isn't, so that you can learn, hopefully, to not repeat the mistakes of Louisville, and not just your own.
Yes, sir. Is there a preferred method of getting in contact with you? Or a required, excuse me, sir, preference, I imagine, is too flippant.
Mm. It's easy for us to get a hold of each other, downstairs, as it were. But we are more modern creatures than you might think. We all get one of these eventually. You may not get yours tonight, but I promise you that is being dealt with. And when you have, I'll give you a number to put in there.
Thank you, sir. Last question, then I will be on my way to begin my own betterment, sir. Uh, Cyrus. He gives me the vibe that if I were in a lonely alley with him and he spotted me, I would be killed on sight. Is that an accurate assumption?
You kind of hear him laugh, but he's not quite sure if it's because it's really funny or it's just a weird question. And just don't
I
give him reason to. He will
understood.
scowl all he likes. He's very good at it. And yes, if he has a reason to, you will be pummeled into a paste from which there is no amount of regrowing from that. Many a young fledgling, neonate, or puffed up sabbat have tried to wander into the sewers towards the Warrens, thinking they were going to make a name for themselves, only to be met by him turning them into a fresh shellacking on the rock wall. Just don't give him reason to do so, and you'll be fine.
Thank you, sir.
Now here's the fun bit. And he does kind of grin as he leans in a little bit. With us, maybe we didn't learn this before for whatever reason, but it's clan first. Camarilla second. If one of theirs is chasing you, giving you a hard time for no real reason, simply minding your own business, chased, attacked, and you happen to run into Cyrus, the scowl won't be directed at you, dearie. I won't diminish him. But think of him like the mean uncle. You don't want any attention from him. He doesn't want any from you. But nobody gets to mess with his, or he will stomp them into soup.
Thank you, sir.
As long as you yourself are not the problem.
Perfectly understood, sir.
I'll give you a choice tonight, based on what we've talked about, your potential starting role. You're going to be given a choice. Whether to go with us to the Warrens tonight, or board down with the rest of them on the island. Don't make it now. Make it when you're asked. And at that, he leaves. Not even waiting to see what you say or if you ask anything else. Give you your food for thought. And leave you deal with it. Artem,
Hello.
are you trying to carry on a conversation with Jethro or Tessa, or have you kind of tried to move back into the house?
You know, I probably not going to talk to Jethro. I might want to talk to Tessa later, but Artem's having a lot of problems tonight. Not all of them are vampire problems.
Hmm.
So I think what he's going to do right now is look for one of the people that he came in with.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who maybe is in a similar situation, but might have been better prepared for it. Is Cora
Okay.
still around?
Cora will have re-entered the house, I imagine.
So we'll come back to that for just a second. Does Cora want to talk to someone else before we round back to player on player?
I guess it depends on what the order of operations has to be. I don't mind talking to players and then also speaking to NPCs afterwards. I know she is going to eventually talk to Atherton and to, I guess, maybe Leland a little bit more since we're still together.
So why don't we deal with that part then of walking in with Leland?
Grace or Nina was apparently gonna pop around to see if Titus was in the area, so maybe that's something to do, but perhaps that's another night sort of thing.
I think for now it's going to be another night situation. If you're walking with Leland, let's deal with that first.
Okay.
And we will come back to Artem in a moment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Hey. So what do you want to say to Leland? Who I realize I couldn't do the pseudo British accent tonight, so imagine that's been going on.
That's absolutely fine.
See,
So you
pronunciation
mentioned
is difficult.
you
Sorry, go
mentioned
ahead.
you might be able to help with complications, and yet I get the feeling that I was the only one who was sharing. Is this not the type of thing where we're all so open about our feelings?
Apologies. It's the requirements of being that low on the totem pole and new. The rest of us have had time to deal with some of these things, but you're a fresh face in a situation that can very quickly become volatile.
Right. Well, that makes plenty of sense.
We're in the unenviable position of needing to make a snap decision. It's not all about our feelings as much as how bad is it? How can we mitigate it? Can we?
From his accent, do I get the impression that he himself is from overseas, or is it more of like kind of a mid-Atlantic, I sound like Frasier sort of thing?
A bit of both. Either he's from there or spent time there,
Okay,
or it is that mid-Atlantic faux accent. But it seems to come from a more genuine place rather than the affect of someone that picked up at Juilliard.
gotcha. It's like, no, you're from the UK.
Once upon a time.
Hmm. That's an interesting thing that we have, all of us, are once upon a times. Is it polite to ask about them? I didn't know a lot of people in Frankfurt, so
About who we were before, where we're
yes,
from. Mm. It's one of those have to feel it out sort of things, I suppose. Not everyone is very open. Not everyone wants to share because sharing makes you vulnerable. Or can.
of course. Then I'll go ahead and continue to ask the question and just apologize if it steps on toes.
That's one way of going about it. I will say that the older someone is, be less keen to ask them such questions. The older you are, the more vulnerable it could make you.
Right.
And not everyone is going to be as willing to share as your sire may have been.
Mm. I think it's probably a little bit different, right? But a child and a sire.
Not universally. Many are fraught at best. Many are made to be the tool for something, or they were crime of passion.
I'd hope to ask you and Atherton both, because you came to collect me and because he spoke up for me.
Hmm.
Do you have any connection to Essen?
I met him a very long time ago. It's
You did.
more, we happened to be simply in the same room at the same time, and we didn't kill each other, so that's a plus.
I see. And now you have me wondering how long ago exactly it was.
Hmm. Sometime before now. And there's a little bit the first time that he's giving you some kind of cheek. He's otherwise been very um polite and very meek. And this is the first time he's probably cracked a little bit of a joke at you thus far.
Yeah. I like it.
Mm. It was more of a, and you're sort of Aaron Sorkining through the place,
Absolutely.
pointing out various rooms and items and things. And
Cora is interested in the building itself
yeah,
too, so that's appreciated.
it was simply a function in Frankfurt a long time ago. I knew his role, or at least I was introduced to it, and a few more broken mirrors that are normally in the room. Every now and again, we seem to coalesce in a random place, have a conversation.
Somehow I get the feeling that with us it's not quite as random as it might seem.
At that, he does very broadly smile. There is an interconnectedness that even we don't entirely understand, and yet we do.
Is that the means you're thinking of using to be able to help me with my individualized complications?
There can be ways to utilize it, but it's often creates more problems than it solves. What I do is more sitting down with you like a therapy session and simply talking it out, seeing if it can be talked out.
Well, I hope you work for free, as I don't have American insurance.
Nobody does.
Cora's going to shake her head in true, um, like, what's the word? The word is escaping me. Uh, she finds it, ah, I don't know the word. Sorry.
I like to think that there is a word that she's trying to search for, and either in her mind or as they pass by a now empty library, there's a part of her that's looking, not physically, but just briefly looking for that dictionary or a thesaurus. She doesn't have access to a phone right now. And in that moment, he catches you staring. You don't know how long. Is this part of it?
uh, I'm sorry, what do you mean?
And you went somewhere else for a moment.
It's,
And for a second, do you know why? It wasn't the thesaurus that you were searching for. Not consciously. You see a book, or at least you think you see a book of crossword puzzles.
it, in fact, I think it is.
Mm.
Unless you see that over there.
Do you point it out, or do you walk over to it, or?
I'm gonna walk over to it.
Mhm.
Uh, can I feel it? Is it partway solved? Do I recognize the handwriting?
You don't actually. It is physical and tangible. And as you are remarking on it, you see a shape walking from into your periphery as you realize that you are in a much bigger library than you realized. And slightly hooded figure. You may be forgiven for a moment for thinking, oh, maybe that's Tabby. Same kind of MO. But it's a much more ruined face. Like a series of face transplants over face transplants over face transplants, and none of it is quite settling properly.
Oh, I'm sorry. This must be yours.
They don't say anything, and it's hard to see their eyes. It's almost like they're sunken in. A bit of pitch. And they don't. It's not that they don't comprehend that you're there, but they don't say anything. Maybe they can't. And they just gives a little nod, at least of some acknowledgement that you're in the room with them. And they pick up the crossword, and it's like they're almost hugging it to themselves. And he just sort of like slowly turns before just leaving the room casually.
Leland, who was that?
A bit of a local mystery. Don't really know the real name, if there even is one, but the nickname that sort of seems to have stuck, for better or worse, is Lump.
It's a bit cruel, don't you think?
They are perfectly capable of writing down another one if they so choose. You'll often find that many Nosferatu choose ironic or intentionally provocative names. Imagine, there's one in North Carolina who enjoyed having such a profane name to make a Ventru Primogen have to call it all the time in public because there was no other. And what are they meant to do?
On some level, I have to admire that.
Theirs is often a confused and unpleasant experience. Take the enjoyment from it where they can. No. And he starts to walk you through the rest of the building. If there's anything else you want to ask or talk to him about.
Um, I don't think so. I think she will just say Essen is a fan of the puzzles.
Ah. Perhaps then he might appreciate you sending him a little Savannah-based jumble back.
Yeah, I think he'd like that.
I'll see if we can find something. And as we find Cora in the main room, Artem looking for her. Please.
I guess before this, he was probably just standing outside, smelling the air, being antisocial, as he does. He remembers suddenly that he's in a different country, one that he did not intend to be in. And he has a lot of questions that would be nice if someone would answer. He remembers there was another person in the little group that had brought in that, while she had chosen to be here, maybe in a similar situation. So he seeks her out. So you say you were sitting in the main room?
Being walked in, so.
Yeah, I guess Artem will approach and maybe tap you on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, you said your name was Cora?"
That's right. Artem, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes. Do you have a few minutes to talk? I find myself at a disadvantage here.
Yeah, of course. Well, what would you like to know? Honestly, I'd been hoping we'd get a chance to speak again too. It's nice to know that there are a few of us who are a little bit far from home, though I am sorry about your situation.
Yeah. Yes. We're here. We make the best what we can. So you said you chose to come here to America. Yes, you had some places you were looking at.
Yeah, that's right. Uh, there were a few bigger places at first, names I knew, not just in the United States. Mexico City, New York, Vancouver, maybe. But mm, this is maybe a bit more my speed. Uh, this is one situation in which I was born yesterday.
You're very new. Hmm. I only had one name that I gave my travel agent. They didn't get it right, unfortunately. So, as you were researching this place, did you happen to learn about anything like, I don't know, money? Like, I know it's called a dollar, but like, what's what does I suppose we don't need food, but what do things cost? What is like a good job? Anything like that?
uh, I'd have to check on the current exchange rate, um, but I need to figure that out for myself too. I know that credit and debit cards are very popular in the United States. Uh, in Frankfurt, we use a lot of cash and coins still. People tend to trust it more.
I
But
can
they're starting
understand
to
that.
catch on. I'd say I might be in more of a similar situation than you think. I used to have an allowance back home, but I'm going to have to figure things out for myself.
Well, I suppose we can learn together then.
What is
How
it?
long have you? Go ahead.
What is it you do?
Hmm. I don't do much, honestly. My new life suppose you could call me a bit of a what, a forester, perhaps a park ranger. What do they say here? Um, I learned to work. I built my own home. Um, before that, you know, I I worked in a mine. Operated a little bit of heavy machinery. You know. What about you?
Uh, So I was a driver, but that was the old life. In the new life, I listened to music, I went to museums, I enjoyed myself mostly.
Is there a lot of money in that?
Not at all. I see Kate's raising her hand, so
Is
give
it
an
okay to
opportunity.
interrupt your banter there, or
Sure.
okay? Who was first? Was it Kate?
I was just going to ask, since they're in the main
Mm-hmm.
front, at one point, can they see Kate go have that quick exchange with Jean Corwin and then kind of finish that conversation?
I would say you're finishing your conversation as they're in the middle of theirs. If you wanted to go and interject yourself, is that the intent?
I'll hover nearby, but I don't want to like purposefully break up if they're look like they're having, conversation together.
Okay. Get back to that in a sec. Tabby.
Abby, and after a certain amount of time of standing up in the railing, watching, her eyes eventually fall on Kate as she comes back. And Tabby seems to make a decision and descends the stairway heading for her direction. You probably would see her approach, unless she wouldn't get right next to you, unseen. Uh, Pardon me?
Miss Morn, was it?
Miss Fulton, yes.
It's a
Uh,
been true habit.
It's I admit that I was a bit embarrassed and awed when we were all making our introductions and we heard yours.
We don't pick who sires us.
No,
Just,
I was just wondering, since you come from such an impressive background, but since we're all new here, I was just wondering if, and I don't know how settled you are here already, how many connections I'm sure you already got, but
less than you
if,
think.
well, if you could use, I don't know, someone just on the same page in your same corner. You don't need, not for presentations, of course, but someone to keep an eye out for you. I'm not good at selling myself, as has been painfully hammered into me this evening.
When we get phones, we'll exchange numbers.
Sure, I'll take that. I don't know when I'd be getting mine. I imagine yours would be a bit before me.
It's yet to be seen.
Are you ingratiating yourself? Well,
Tabby, I've only been here as long as you have.
I hope yours was better than mine.
Better, worse. I think different is the key word. We're
I
all
would
being.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I would say as the room is rapidly emptying, you are becoming rapidly aware of how few people there are, and it's the four of you right now. You're not nestled up to each other, but you're also not at the far ends of the room from each other either. You are able to at least hear parts of each other's conversations now. If you wanted to continue as you are, or gravitate towards one another.
I'll drift over to Cora and Artem.
Cora
Abby
will
will drift behind her.
finish up a thought as they are drifting.
Hmm.
Yes. So,
What
I
sort of
guess.
music?
Oh, the music scene, yeah. Uh, I like all kinds of things, but I spend a lot of time listening to EDM.
You haven't heard of Unisexy, have you?
Nah, Sexy. That's not a name that I thought that I would hear on this side of the Atlantic. I saw him
Probably wouldn't
live.
be.
It actually
What?
means a lot to me. Yeah.
We might have to compare notes.
So, which of his singles do you like the best recently?
I've been out of the game for a little while, maybe about 5 years, but I think Black, Red, and Gray. Do you
And
remember that one?
that's a good one. It is old. You have been out of it for a while. I'll have to take
Cora.
you to a
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, it's fine. We're just talking about music.
I wanted to see how you were. I think of all of us, you had the most reaction to what happened.
Huh. I've been trying not to think about it, but I haven't been so close to something like that before. Um, Cora internally thinks about her own death, and how that's not entirely true, but the circumstance is much different. Um, so
It's one of the more unfortunate realities of court.
Second one I've seen.
well, I don't intend on becoming a third.
Well, we seem to have survived the first night. One down.
Artem and I were just discussing how we might survive the next few. I was about to tell him that the city is big on tourism and there's an art school here, but there is a lot of wild land and shipping, so you might still be able to find something to do.
Well, the wildland I will certainly be spending a lot of time in. I don't know if any of you own homes and you need I don't do anything with water or electricity, but anything else I might be able to help with.
That reminds me. Can I look around and see if Sokolov is spottable?
Funny you say that, because Baxter, Sokolov, and Atherton are actively chattering as they are heading in your collective direction. Atherton is the one. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say to the group, I'm afraid we might have to part for now.
Mm.
I think we're close enough to sunrise that a drive back into town is imminent
Mm.
for those of us going to town.
Actually, at that, Sokolov will be the one to interject before. Apologies, Miss Fulton. The arrangements with your home are still being dealt with. Things have been brought, and your new car is being delivered. But the changeover is going to be a little more complicated than was anticipated. There are, however, alternative boarding that is to be presented. Atherton will speak up at that point. Yes, I was about to extend our concept of Southern hospitality. For those of you that would like a place to stay tonight, perhaps for the next 2 or 3 nights while you get your bearings, we do have a place that we like to call the cottage at the southern end of the property. It's kept within the depths of the woods. No one will be bothering you, certainly not from that side of the curtain. And it will be a safe roost from the sun.
Well, I don't need to know anything more about it. That sounds wonderful.
Baxter, in his slightly scratchier voice, I mean, you got a choice. I mean, you can stay here with them or you can come with me to the Warrens tonight. It's up to you. But either way, TikTok.
I'll go to the cottage too. Seems like a
All right. And he
cozy
just walks off.
place. All right, cool.
He's got places to be and doesn't want to be here.
Mr. Sokolov, could I arrange a ride into town tomorrow evening?
Sorry, can you say that again for the player?
I asked Mr. Sokolov if I could arrange a ride into town tomorrow evening.
Yes, I think I could have things sorted for you by then. Again, I do apologize.
No, it's all right. I think tomorrow might be a good time to stave off any peckishness.
I'll see it done. Atherton, Sokolov. And they sort of shake hands very curtly. See each other off. As Poppy is making her way towards the group as well, it's like, oh, good, we're all here. Well, if everyone would like to be going to the cottage, you included Miss Stewart, we can get that underway now so that we are all comfortably tucked away before the first raise.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton.
Of course. Now, snacks can be provided, but let's get underway, if you don't mind.
I should find my Primogen. He mentioned the arrangement, but I don't know if he wanted me to start tonight. Excuse me.
Of course, we'll be waiting out front if you decide to join us. 5 minutes.
What is the path, the walk like?
It's
Like,
a
is it
reverse of how you were brought into
what
the
is it like
house.
gravel? Is it grass?
It is gravel that leads up to the house itself
Mhm.
because of all the cars that have to park there. You're never going to keep anything, and they didn't want to pave it, it seems. But in terms of getting out of the house, it's the reverse with minus the tour. And there are 2 Range Rovers of an older make and model.
Okay, so we're not
waiting
walking.
outside. No.
Gotcha.
If you've looked at the map of the Isle of Hope, it's freaking massive. So if you started walking now, you'd get there in a couple of hours. So as you are trundled into 2 separate cars so that you're not crammed in and that the 2 cars have some of your things. For Cora, actually, your things are already moved there.
Ah, lovely.
So the room in the car is mostly just for the people and for some of Kate's checked luggage.
Tabby, got a sweatshirt you can borrow. You're gonna want to get that under cold water as soon as possible.
Oh, this?
Get the blood out.
Indicating the blood.
Hmm.
Yeah, probably.
You might want to toss it, but it depends on how sentimental it is to you.
Not particularly. Most of the time, it's better to not be seen anyway, so fashion is not exactly high on here, but
Well,
every
if you
little
don't
bit helps.
mind a Georgetown sweater, I've got an oversized one in my bag.
I will take that for sure. Thank you.
So the way we're going to split this up is it'll be Cora and Poppy and potentially Artem. And in the other car will be Kate with all her luggage and Tabby because I like that juxtaposition.
I'm a suitcase.
Leave that one where it is. We don't need that Urban Dictionary load up again at the moment. So as Cora, you get into, I'm presuming, the front seat with Atherton. Do you wish to say anything to him?
Uh, sure. We're in mixed company,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll say some things anyway. Uh, thanks for speaking up for me and back there.
Well, we do try to take care of our own where we can.
It's appreciated. I am curious. And do you know Essen or just know of him?
More by reputation.
I understand.
We've been in the same room, but haven't had the chance for a extended interaction.
Well, all the same, thank you again.
Well, I am very curious to see how things progress for you. It's not every day that we have the childhood of such illustrious members of our society dropping into our fair city.
Yes, there's a child of a prince as well.
That is certainly its own legacy and baggage, as I'm sure you will come to realize for yourself.
I haven't had much of a chance to talk to her. I'm actually interested to see how our experiences might compare or contrast.
I imagine the two of you would have a great deal to discuss on the matter. The room for juxtaposition is immense. But I should like to have a more private conversation with you, perhaps tomorrow night.
I'd enjoy that as well.
I do try to be a bit of a guide to the younger folk when they decide to roll on through. However, on occasion I do fail them. And while there have been a few jabs and japes at Max's truncated fate, he's the first one that maybe looks a little mournful of it.
I don't think you could have anticipated what was coming.
Well, I appreciate that kindness. But I shall live with the fact that 5 out of 6 is a better ratio than some get.
You see that kind of thing a lot.
Most things are patterns. There are periods of stability, periods of unrest, periods of war. Think of it like a fashion trade. Fads come and go, but they always come back. While you are continuing this little back and forth, is it okay if I transition over?
Absolutely.
Phenomenal. Artem,
Hello.
you're going to try and find Alden.
Is he around?
Very easily found. He's actually sitting on a rocking chair, old-fashioned rocking chair, on the porch of the main house. Orion, the oversized dog, is laying down, but the way that it's sitting upright while sitting down or laying down makes it easy for him to just reach over and slightly scratch it without any reach whatsoever.
What a good boy. Yeah. So, approach, get his attention. Just sort of point out the door and say, you'd said something about a house you wanted me to fix up. Should I go to the cottage now, or you want to go straight there?
Well, you have a choice. You could get to know the rest of them, or you could see where you're going to be spending more of your time. Either way, you will end up there. Embrace it now or embrace it later.
Sure. I suppose I'll embrace it tomorrow then.
Fair enough. Follow me though, real quick. I want you to see something.
Sure.
He gets up and the dog follows him into the house, through it, assuming you're walking with him. Goes out the rear of the house, down a grass path. You can see the gazebo from an earlier scene near the dock. And as you cross onto the dock, you can see a not necessarily an expensive power boat as much as just a good boat. It's more of a swift workhorse rather than a speed or pleasure craft. This is for just getting on and getting on with it. But as you walk to the edge, the far end where presumably his boat is, you are watching two of the security guards from inside. Not necessarily the ones you recognize, but you just recognize the look at this point, that you could pick them out pretty easily. They're unfurling the tarp and chumming the waters with your chum that you arrived with. Sorry, Sam, I know you're watching.
He's crying.
And as you get to his boat, you see a younger woman in a, I wouldn't say a prom dress, but something younger but tasteful without being like a real like nightclub dress. Because I wanted you to meet someone before we parted ways tonight so that you could be familiar. Artem, this is Christiana. Christiana, Artem.
Just sort of nod. Hello.
And the way she's sitting on the boat, arms are crossed, and she just turns to you and there's, despite the just young, diminutive, almost dainty looking, and there's an undertone of a growl to just this almost sigh. Yeah, hi. Can we go? You'll make proper acquaintance, hopefully tomorrow night. But I need the two of you to start occupying some space. He needs someone to show him around. You need a chaperone. Because I don't want to go to the places you want to go, and I don't feel entirely compelled to keep you from going. Consider yourselves each other's babysitter until I say otherwise. Now be polite and shake his hand. She glares and isn't really sure if it's for you or for him or just in general. And there's this long beat before she finally just gets up, walks out of the boat. That single pump handshake and just back on the boat. Like barely enough time for there to actually be contact before she's just, I'm done. I'm out. I did the thing. Leave me alone. And as she's just raring to go, he puts a hand on your back to walk you a few steps away and goes, have fun.
Hmm. This is frighteningly familiar.
Good. Except I get the impression that that was in the woods. This is a lot more wild. Go join your peers.
See you tomorrow.
I'd better. And he gets on the boat, and you hear that rumble and churn as it begins to speed away.
I probably got to run because I only had 5 minutes.
Just imagine that it's starting to go and then just T1000ing it. You get there, and Atherton's window is rolled down. All right. Hop on in.
He hops.
Mm.
Glad to see you decided to come with us.
Just having a nice conversation. I figured we could keep going.
Nice that we all seem to be sticking together for this first day.
You're in a different car.
Ah, aren't Cora and I in the same car?
Nope, you
No.
and I are in the same
Yeah.
car.
Oh, I got it wrong.
It's okay. You were saying it to her. Unless there are any other comments you want to share in your little separated groups, we can start to close out for tonight. Everything good? Everyone, is there anything else you want to add to each other? Take the silence as we're moving on. Okay. The second car is driven by the guard you met at the start of the night, Bruno. And the two cars, the Range Rovers, are brought down that same canopied road that maybe you didn't realize went this far along the length of the island. Headlights dance off of it, the hanging moss of the oaks. You realize how, despite the fact that you are ostensibly in a county of a major city in the US, you feel like you are quite distant from civilization. Deeper and deeper into the woods. Finally, you drive off the main as you find a secluded, shrouded in trees house made of stone, smaller than Wormslow itself, and likely built long after. But as your small convoy pulls up along the front doors, you are dispersed to start heading inside, the lights coming on, the chill beginning to leave the rooms, as the heat turns on. There's a slight musty smell of a house that is not occupied full time, but is otherwise well kept. While there are some main rooms like kitchen, dining room, dens, it's mostly for a few rooms, each with your own private, sturdy lock that locks on your side of the door. Shuttered windows on both sides, in and out. Not just bits of planks of wood, but thick, rolled, folded steel. And the curtains to at least give the sense of decoration. While they're not massive rooms, they are all comfortably furnished. And for some of you, probably the most comfortable room you've been in a very long time. For some of you, it may be more of a come down. And as everyone begins to process the events of the evening, you feel that disembodied creeping warmth as you know the sun is cresting the horizon. And while you are not immediately put to sleep, it will soon find you. However restful it may be, there is still more to come. Some more to learn. And there is a great deal that you each know that you are ignorant of. either of your own state or the state of the city. But we can start to answer those questions next time. Good night, folks. Thank you for joining us.